Hello, Trasetta Alexander here, motivational speaker and faith-based business coach. And I just wanted to do this short video to talk to you about the difference between success and failure in God's eyes. A lot of times we have the tendency to think that when God gives us direction or he gives us an idea, we get a vision or we get direction from God to do something, and then we go forth in it. We get this image in our mind of what it looks like because it came from God. And what we see, we end up building up this huge vision of what it should be. Well, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but what happens is sometimes we end up setting ourselves up for disappointment. And then we feel like it's a failure. Let's use an example of, or actually, let me share one of my own personal stories. So in my business, I got this great idea from the Lord to put on a conference for as the anniversary of my business, Sister Spotters. It was called Ignite Her. And he gave me all of this. He gave me what it is that he wanted me to share. And I was super excited. But I decided, I didn't really consult him, I'm going to be honest. And I decided that I wanted this event to not take place in my hometown where I live because I saw Sister Spotters taking off in that first year and going all around the state of Florida. And so I wanted to have a central location for people to come and it not be such a huge stress for them financially, as well as having to take off of work a whole lot of time, whatever. So I planned this huge event. I went immediately, put down a down payment, booked this room. I was going to have I planned for 100 attendees, and I just went to town with it. Well, as time went on, I promoted the event. I got my speakers. I did all these things. I did got the catering established, and I did all this work. And coming down to the last couple of weeks before the event, I had 3 people who had registered. Needless to say, 3 people registered for this event was not going to cover the cost of the hotel, the cost of the catering, the cost of the speakers, the cost of I was also paying for their hotel rooms, not to mention my own personal costs to travel to Orlando and stay in the hotel and all the different materials and things that I had done, the ads that I had placed in order to draw people to this event. And I felt like a complete failure. I was like, God, you gave me this vision, and I felt like a complete and utter failure. Now, I didn't say that to my audience who was there because I did end up having a small room of people because I had so many speakers. We ended up with about as many speakers as we had attendees in the end for the event, but it still wasn't enough to cover the cost of the event. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I completely fell flat on my face. And to top it all off, I didn't have the money to cover all of the expenses for the conference. And so I ended up having to get money from my husband to cover the almost $3,000 that I was short in the expense of this conference. Well, here's the thing. One, I made it so it wasn't that it was a failure. It was that I made it a huge event when that wasn't necessarily what God had asked me to do. Yes, I got the vision from him, but that wasn't necessarily the vision that he had given. I think that was my own vision. But here's the thing. Even in that, it wasn't a failure. It wasn't my failure. I was successful because I did what God told me to do. I did what he asked me to do. That is what success is in God's eyes. When God gives you instructions and you are obedient to do what he asked you to do, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of what our expectation of what the end result will look like, If we did what God said do, we are successful. When we don't do what he asked us to do, that is what we would consider to be a failure. Here's another example. I heard this on the radio just the other day. A lady was talking about how she was out at a store and she felt the tugging of the Lord to bless this person with some money. And she had two $10 bills in her purse. And that was all that she had in her purse at the time. It wasn't all the money in the world that she had, but that was all that she had on her at the time. And she wasn't really sure, so she was kind of circling. We've all been there before when God tells us to do something, especially when it comes to like blessing someone or sharing our faith with someone. We've been there where we kind of circle around like, God, if it's really you, then they'll still be there when I come back, or whatever the case may be. So she kind of circled around this person a couple times, and she still felt that unction from the Lord to give the person the $20 that she had. So she pulled out a $10 bill and handed it to the person, and told them that God wanted her to bless them, and here's $10. And she walked off. Well, then the Lord told her, God immediately got on her case and was like, that's not what I told you to do. I told you to give them $20. And so she had to go back to the person and give them the other $10. And she explained to them, why it was she was doing why she was coming back, and that the Lord had originally said for her to give the $20, but that she had been disobedient. And she used that as an opportunity to really talk about faith and believing God and trusting God. And so that is what I'm talking about. When you are obedient to what God says do, that is what is considered to be success. However, when we are disobedient and we don't follow his word, that is what we would consider to be a failure. Failure doesn't necessarily look like what we think it does. So remember in the book of Joshua, where it talks about to meditate on his word day and night and do what it says do, and then you will have good success. Then you will make your way prosperous. It is when we do what God says for us to do that we experience true success, regardless of what it looks like in the world. Sometimes the world will tell us that what we did isn't successful because it's not in big numbers. We didn't make a whole lot of money, or it didn't yield us the results that we thought that it might yield us. But if we did what God said do, then we are truly successful. I hope you find this video to be helpful and that you will go forth, do what God says do, so that you too can make your way prosperous and have good success.